Hello, my name is Nelson and thanks for checking out my custom Half-Life Alyx map. This map features a blind zombie from Half-Life Alyx named Jeff that reacts to sound. Because Jeff cannot be hurt by weapons, other enemies, or even explosives in the game's environment, his presence can cause tense and terrifying moments of gameplay when placed in the right conditions. Before I walk you through the playthrough of the level, here's a quick rundown of what I'll talk about. First, I'll explain the design brief and how I interpreted the brief. I'll next show what I did to create the level to explain my thought process. Finally, I'll try to give you a high-level introduction of the level before taking you through the actual walkthrough of the level. If you want to, you can skip ahead to the actual start of the level walkthrough using the chapters on this video. This map was created as part of the third level design jam hosted by Steve Lee. The theme was 5 rooms, which was supposed to help participating level designers avoid the trap of creating levels that are too big. Its main requirement was to use the source engine created by Valve. As I'm already familiar with the Half-Life Alyx game, I thought Jeff, the blind zombie, would be a natural fit, as his mechanics really shine when players have to share a cramped space with him. And, like most players, the Jeff chapter was definitely my favorite. While we're here, I also want to point out that the number of rooms is not a limit. There can indeed be outdoor areas or corridors. What I'm showing next are screenshots of my personal Google Sheets that I used to keep track of the process. My process for designing a level is mostly logical. I first lay out the goals and design requirements, followed by narrowing down the experience I want players to have. The biggest question I want to tackle at this point is, what words would I want players to describe Jeff with? By setting an experience at the outset, I'll be able to prioritize what goes into the level later. To deliver on that vision, I have to know what I'm working with. Besides Jeff, the blind zombie, I listed out all of the NPCs, weapons, puzzles, and other interactive objects in the game. I was also able to find a number of known problems and constraints about Jeff that the developers detail in the Half-Life Alyx developer commentary. With a good foundation from my design scope and research, I began to brainstorm gameplay beats. These beats were organized according to higher level concepts that were informed by the effect that they have on the player experience. What I'm aiming for is a lean process. That way, I only pick beats that will contribute to a particular purpose, be it keeping the player on their toes, for example, or giving the player some downtime after a tense encounter. Now that I have potential beats to use in the game, it's time to select beats and list them chronologically. A big part of this process is figuring out what the player needs to see or encounter first. A typical example would be hinting the objective, like an obstacle or locked door, before showing the key to solving the objective. To aid in this, I would sometimes use a visual board like Miro to make sure the logic of the level's progression is sound. To this end, I also find it helpful to preempt potential issues for each beat, and to either find a solution to these problems or to consider alternative beats. After the logic is all sorted out, and things are unlikely to change until the next iteration, I'll start to create layouts like these, and use them to block out the level. I did find some documentation on metrics regarding player height, AI navigation, and so on, but my own playtesting shaped the eventual metrics used in the level. Because the level's genre is horror, I chose to add the minimal amounts of sound, lighting, effects, and props to deliver the right tone for the experience. I know that these elements are usually added at a later stage, but I needed to know that my level can make players feel a certain way. Lastly, we get to playtesting with other players. During the level design jam, I wasn't able to get playtesters from my fellow designers. Instead, All of my playtest feedback came from users on the Steam Workshop who were kind enough to leave feedback or record their playthrough. I really appreciated the playthrough videos because I could assess a variety of things, such as playstyles, player intention, and level difficulty, all of which helped me to identify issues that players may not be aware of. Thanks to the playtest, I know which areas needed more work. And then the level itself. In keeping with the theme of 5 rooms, there are 5 main areas, not counting corridors and other spaces. The player starts out in a stairwell, which is room 0. The action starts in room 1 at the entrance of an industrial lab with a mezzanine deck. Room 2 is the actual lab and the space behind it. From there, the player goes 1 floor down into a corridor that leads to room 3, which is where the climax will take place. If they survive room 3, they will end up in a courtyard. This is room 5, which also contains a building that is room 4. With all that out of the way, let's start our walkthrough. Our player begins at the top of the stairwell. Behind them is an escape hatch. The story I want to tell here is that Alyx had just escaped into this building after running into the Combine. There's no way back now, because the ladder is damaged. If the player goes near the ladder, a Combine soldier will spawn on the rooftop. As with most Alyx levels, I've included some light scavenging. The health injector was meant for the fight earlier, because I intended for this map to be easy for most players on the Steam Workshop. On that note, the average player on the Workshop is probably more nimble than the average player of Half-Life Alyx. The player progresses by going through the only door that isn't locked. This is the mezzanine floor where one player is to have an overview of the entire space. The lights are a little on the nose here, as they're meant to point to the green cable and its attached port. At this end of the mezzanine, players can also clearly see the gates for this part of the level, which are the block of planks held up by the crane and the impaired walls behind it. Down here is room 1. This is where players will first see Jeff. Since there's no other way forward, they would have no choice but to free the blind zombie. For context, Jeff is a zombie that only reacts to sound. By default, he will also not take any damage. With Jeff out of the way, players would usually move into the room that Jeff was occupying, only to find another locked door and a button that doesn't work. The player now has a new gate and a new objective, which is to restore power to the button. To direct their attention to the new puzzle, I've added sparks and cables. Jeff is set to wander around this entire space. To make the level more intense, I've added a number of Zen clamps that will draw his attention when the player gets too close. To solve the puzzle, the player has to move around the room and use the clamps to draw him away. The team at Valve calls this the toner puzzle, where a series of cable junctions have to be connected using the multi-tool. In the original game, toner puzzles can be connected visually by cables and conduits. Seeing these conduits signals a second toner puzzle. We'll next see the exploding Zen bloater. They essentially cause the same damage as grenades, and will explode when a player gets too close or far too weak. If players are careless when moving around the space, they might walk into one of the two variables. To save themselves, they will need to fire shots, which will attract Jeff's attention.
Last four.
The toner puzzle here is meant to be simple. The purpose was to balance difficulty a little, while the main purpose was to get players to drop their guard for the next part of the puzzle. This junction is a trap. If players click blindly without seeing a hit, they'll trigger an alarm and Jeff will come running. The previously inactive port is now active, and it leads to another set of conduits, indicating that closing the circuit here will do more than power the button. The alarm. Jeff is now distracted by the alarm and will not come up the room. Nothing the player does will get his attention. To move forward, the player will be forced to cover their mouth. If they don't, the spores around Jeff will trigger cough response from Alyx, and Jeff will definitely kill her. As a quick note, I have added some masks for the players who are using the one-handed mode. This will allow them to continue the level. With the button pressed, the doors of the airlock opens up to room 2. Alright, I hope you were a little scared. It's especially effective in VR, as players were focused on Jeff and did not realize that the entrance they came in from had been blocked until they were trying to run away. As you may have noticed, I made it so that the cranes themselves attract Jeff's attention. In the original game, this type of walls is known to be breakable by way of explosives. Through playtesting, I realized that players didn't need to be taught what to do. Jeff leaves the room into his own corridor that the player cannot access. In the basement, we see another one of these barriers, also known as a combine fence. There's no real function here except to keep players guessing if Jeff might be around the corner. I didn't want to pack much here into the corridors, as it's meant to give the player some breathing space from Jeff. This dark tunnel is room 3. The dim lighting and the combined fence to the left are meant to foreshadow and prepare players for what's to come. Once here, the player's torchlight will be enabled. We hear a hit crab somewhere. In earlier playtests, some players were merciless in chasing down hit crabs. To turn their attention to the situation, I chose to go with an armored hit crab. These blue crates are meant to block the teleportation rays. During playtesting, I realized how different free locomotion was from teleportation, and wanted to level the playing field. I try to provide choice and agency for players to solve problems. Crouching under the pipes is what I hope most players would do, since the wreckage would really set off Jeff. This is the most fast-paced way of moving through this space. Alternatively, players could bash through the boxes. Another method is that they could follow the light and hide in this little corner. One side effect I intended for is a nice view of seeing Jeff giving chase to the Hitler. These planks also create sound. They're meant to be easy to remove, but people move differently when they panic. Then, we get to the trip mines. Most players should get a good head start, because Jeff isn't usually that fast. At this juncture, you will also be right to think that you could throw an object to set off all of the trip mines. This is indeed something that I have not solved for, and I might work on it in the future.
Okay.
After both Jeff and the player are out, the tunnel will close. This courtyard is room 5. The building on the right is room 4. The player needs to collect 3 batteries to power both the console and a combined door in the smaller building. Room 4 is supposed to be less tense, though I also didn't want to give players a free pass without Jeff involved. Opening up each of the roller shutter doors will trigger a bottle to roll out. Two of the batteries are placed on the taller shelves. Players can either stand on the metal barrels and reach for the batteries, or move the blue barrel to get closer. Once the batteries have been collected, players will find Jeff in the way when they're trying to work on the console. They need to lure him away. If the combine door opens, they now have access to a security post. The security post is linked to an alarm outside the courtyard. If this alarm is activated, Jeff will head out. There's also a column of 5 trip mines. If players choose to not deactivate them, Jeff will die. I chose to save Jeff this time. I thought of letting Jeff go out with a bang, so he encounters a Combine Charger, who will fire on sight. Due to the unpredictability of the AI, I chose for the fight to happen behind the screen and let the sounds do most of the storytelling. Here's what happens if Jeff is sent to die. If a player chooses to not kill Jeff, they will see that Jeff makes a brief stop at the deactivated trip mines. I wanted this little window for players to reverse their decision because most players really didn't hesitate to kill Jeff in the original game. Jeff is out of the picture now, and all we have to do is power the console and the level ends. Thanks for watching.